Can you believe that the 10th main set of the One Piece TCG is about to drop? Next week, with the 21st of March, it's going to be officially here, which means this Friday, the 14th of March, is pre-release season. It is kicking off. And today we're going to be focusing on everything that you need to know to be able to give yourself the best chance to win your pre-release event. Now, if it is your first time attending a pre-release event, first of all, welcome. And secondly, hopefully you have fun and enjoy what is now going to be a crazy mad addiction, the One Piece TCG.
Stay back, don't scare them.
Do you like my decor, by the way? Decorated myself. Pretty good. So how pre-release events work is one of two ways. The first is via a constructed event, which is basically the same thing that happens at locals every single week. You bring your pre-made deck, you battle it out, and the winner will take home all the prizes. The second way, which is the way more entertaining way, which is what this video is going to focus on, is a sealed event. So how that works is part of your entry, you'll get 6 packs of OP-10, you'll open them up, and you build a deck from all the cards in those packs. Now, there are a few different deck building rules when it comes to the sealed events. First of all, you're only building a deck with 40 cards rather than 50. Second of all, there's no color restrictions. So if your leader is red, you can use green, purple, orange, black, pink, whatever cards are found in your pack. And third of all, there is no single card limit. So you can run 1 copy, 2 copy, 4 copies, 6, 20, 40 copies of the exact same card. No problem at all.
Oh, that's a lot.
Now, as part of your entry, you will also get some pre-release packs and some event promos. Some stores will allow you to use those in your deck building, some won't, so make sure you check with your store before you chuck them in your deck. Also, don't get rid of all the other cards you don't put in your deck initially. They are technically your sideboard, and you are allowed to interchange cards between those ones and your deck between games. So now that we have a basic understanding, let's figure out exactly what we're playing for. And Buggy players, I can hear you all rejoicing now. We can finally play Buggy at a bit more of a competitive level because we have access to the promo. So we get the participant version, which is kind of like the non-full art, non-stamped version, and then the winner will take home the stamped version of the Buggy promo. Now let's get into the meaty section of this video. Let's start off with the key stuff, the leaders. In my opinion, the Sanji and the Bonnie are going to be 2 best leaders for this pre-release event. The Sanji, activate main once per turn, gives something rush that doesn't have on play and cost 8 or less. And the Bonnie is when your opponent attacks once per turn, rest a Don to rest either a leader or character on your opponent's side of the field. 2 really good leaders, some great effects going on right there. These are the other leaders, which are also pretty decent. I don't think as good as the other 2. The Zoro is a Don ×1. All your characters gain plus 1000 power for the turn. What is also really good about Zoro in this set is the Supernova kind of tag there for it. There's a fair few cards that bounce off or get some extra effects of that leader Supernova tag. So keep that in mind. The next one we have is the Captain Kid, starter deck 2. Captain Kid also has the Supernova tag, which ties in well with some stuff. The effect of this one is activate main once per turn, rest 3 Don, trash a card to be able to restand the leader. So you can get some double swings going on right there. The Katakuri, Don ×1 when attacking, you can look at the top of your or your opponent's life, leave it there or move it, and then gain extra 1000 power. So for attaching 1 Don, you swing for 7. Very good, very Don effective right there. And Shanks is the last one here on this list. Shanks is in the kind of same breath as Bonnie, where you get to basically nullify attack, but the Shanks effect is once per turn you can minus something by 1000 power, a leader or a character. The Bonnie can nullify a bigger attack, but can be played around to an extent. The Shanks will always be able to have access to a minus 1000 power, but sometimes won't be able to nullify a bigger character's swing. Now, if you do want to play a newer leader or you're kind of forced to play a newer leader, these are going to be your better options. The yellow Captain Kid and the red-green Smoker, Tashigi Smoker. The Kid is once again a Supernova kind of tag, so keep that in mind, going to be very good. The effect for the Kid is end of your turn, you may turn the top card of your life face up. Then you can set one of your 3 to 8 cost Supernova type characters as active, and that character gains blocker. You don't have to set the character active to give it blocker, so keep that in mind. You can play something out and then give it blocker, but you can't restand one character then give another character blocker, so don't be caught up by that rule right there. The Smoker is your opponent's turn, or your Navy and your Punk Hazard type characters gain plus 1000 power. Not as many of those as there are Supernova, but there are some that can be used. And the other part of the effect is activate main once per turn. If you have a character with 7,000 power or more, you can restand 2 Don. There's a lot of events in this set that are very good, which can make Smoker a viable choice, but a 4-life leader, more stipulations than it would be desired to be able to get that effect off. Plus, you're not going to be buffing a whole lot of things. So Smoker is probably the less desired option of the new ones, but either of these will be good. Now, your Rainbow Luffy players, or those people who are forced to play Rainbow Luffy, will have a section right at the end dedicated to cards that also are very good because of Rainbow Luffy. But don't skip to the end. Watch the rest of the video because the rest of the cards that we talk about will still be good for your Rainbow Luffy decks. Now, let's begin with talking about their 2k counters. Rule of thumb with a 2k counter, just include it. That's it. Simple, easy, done. Let's take a quick look at the rarities of these guys here. We can see not a lot in the common section. Most of them are uncommon, so there is a good chance you're not going to see a lot of these. If you're very unlucky, there's a chance you could see none of them, so keep that in mind. Just maximize them out. Let's talk about ones with some good effects. First of all, we have the Mocha, which is basically an on-play minus something by 1,000 power. Is a bit hefty because it costs you 3 to play it, but can be used if needed. Next, we have the Giola, costs you 2. This one with a 2,000 body. When your opponent attacks once per turn, you can rest 2 Don, rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or lower. So a great way to kind of get some extra rest. Run that with Bonnie. You can rest multiple things. Your opponent may not be able to even attack. Next, we have X-Drake, also something similar to the Giola, which allows you to rest some things. X-Drake costs you 3 to play. You may rest this character. If the number of life cards is less than or equal to your opponent's, you can rest something with a cost of 4 or less. So same cost that you are resting. I'm saying resting a lot, aren't I? But you do have to rest this character, and you just got to watch those life counts there. And next up, we have Sabo. Good stat lines for Sabo. 4 cost, 5,000 body. If one of your characters with the original cost of 7 or lower would be removed from the board by your opponent's effects, you may instead bounce the Sabo back to your hand. So a great way to get a 2k counter back in your hand there. Can also protect it if you swung with it to then bounce it back as well. And finally, the last 2k counter, which has some decent effects here, is the Tony Chopper, the Sanji Chopper. Costs you 4, 4,000 body, is a blocker, but gains extra 2,000 power on your opponent's turn. So it is a 6k blocker, which is very nice to see. Speaking of blockers, these are all the blockers we have access to. We look at the rarity breakdown here. A lot of them are common, so we're probably going to see a bunch of blockers. Also, kind of general rule of thumb with blockers is just to max out on them. If you get some insane luck and pull like 20 of them, you probably don't want to run 20. You probably want to run, say, like 8 to 12, I guess, and then maybe use the others as filler if you need to. But there's only one blocker which has a decent effect here, which is the Marco. 3 cost, 5,000 body. Vanilla stat line, by the way. You'll probably hear me say that a lot throughout this video. The effect is on KO, you can bounce something with a cost of 4 or lower back to the owner's hand. So that can be something of yours or your opponent's, but generally for these sealed events, you want to focus on your opponent's board just to gain some good tempo that way. Now let's talk about the vanillas. Vanillas are very good in this kind of format. They're cheaper bodies with bigger stat lines. As you can see there, there's 3 cost, 5,000 power, works all the way up to 7 cost and 9,000 power. These guys are very good if you're going to run Sanji as your leader. You get a nice bigger body with rush. You can have all of these rush, so it can be pretty scary for your opponent to deal with. And guess what? They're all common. So you're going to see a bunch of them as well. Counter events are the next thing we're going to talk about here. These are the best ones from the set. There are some others in there, but probably just ignore those. Just focus on these guys right here. The rarity breakdown of these, you got 3 common, which are the last 3 that we have pictured here on the board. The other 2 are the rare, the divine departure, and the room, and the uncommon. But let's break them down, starting with the divine departure. A 1 cost event does have 2 effects. The first effect is not a counter. The first effect is actually a KOing effect. You rest 5 Don, so I guess a total of 6. You can KO something with 8,000 power or less. Pretty good. You'd be hitting most things at that point as well. There is some power manipulation stuff we'll talk about in a second, which will allow you to basically hit anything in this set, in this event with that KOing ability. So really good to just add off the bat right there. But the counter part, which is why we're in this section, is you can give something plus 3,000 power for the battle. So 1 cost, 3,000 power, pretty good card going on right there. Next we have Room, also a 1 cost event. This one will also buff something by 1000 power for the battle, but you do have to have 1 or less life to have that happen. You also do get a bonus effect to be able to meet that requirement. You can set one of your 5 cost lower characters as active. The trigger, you get to draw a card. Next we have the 10 layered Igloo. This one is also a 1 cost for a 3000 buff. It does cost you 2 this time instead of 1, but you will also then be able to minus something by 2000 power on your opponent's side of the board. So a total of 5000 power being manipulated for just $2 is actually pretty good. The effect is one of your leader characters gains plus 1000 power during the turn. Next we have Let's Meet Again in the New World, also a 2 cost event. This one will just straight up buff something by 4000 power, pretty good to have. Then if you have 0 life cards, you also get to draw a card. The trigger, which I believe is what is written in the text, not on the actual picture of the card here, is you can KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost equal to or less than the number of your opponent's life cards. So nice little cheeky KOing effect off life. Next we have a Little Black Bears. This one will also buff something by 4000 power. It does cost you 3 to get there. You do get some bonuses with it. If you have 7 or more Dawn cards on the field and you have 5 or less cards in your hand, you get to draw a card. You might want to prioritize the other couple because it's a little bit cheaper, but sometimes just being able to have that extra draw, but also just having access to a counter event is going to be good. The trigger is you can ramp it on as active. Now let's talk about the power manipulation cards. Let's change the beefy boys into not so beefy boys. The cards that we have that allow us to do this are these 3 right here. We've spoken about the Mocha already. And if you look at the rarity here, the Mocha and the Gum Garment UFO are uncommon, with the Monet being the super rare. So we know the Mocha minuses by 1000 power. The Monet does similar in terms of that, but you do get some bonuses. Activate main, you rest this character. Give 2 rested Dawn to a leader or character. And then you get that minus 1000 power we spoke about. So a total of 3000 power being manipulated for just 2 cost. Much more effective than the 3 cost to get that minus 1k off the Mocha. Next up we have the Garment UFO 2 cost event. You can minus something on your opponent's board by 4000 power. Then if you have 2 or less life cards, you can give one of your leaders or characters plus 1000 power for the turn. So pretty good if you have something that can restand, swing again. And the trigger is you can carry something with 3000 power or less. You're going to smack a lot of blockers with that, so that's going to be pretty good. Now our removal of cards, and some of them, the last 2 in particular, are the ones that deal with the power, so they'll tie nicely with the cards that we've just spoken about. The rest deal with cost. There is nothing in the set that's going to minus cost, so kind of what you see is what you get in terms of the cost removal. If we look at the rarity breakdown here, we've got a bit of a mixed bag, slightly on the high end in terms of your rarities there. So your commons are the weak don't get to choose how they die and the barrier pistol. And your uncommons are the special long range attack and the god thread. We've already spoken about the Marco on this list, so let's jump over to the only other character, which is the Kairos, which is a vanilla satline, 7 cost, 9000 body, no counter, on play, bounce something with a cost of 5 or less to the owner's hand. You're going to hit a lot of things in this format with those stats. The first event we have here is the special long range attack, 3 cost event. You draw a card and then bounce something with a cost of 2 or less to the owner's hand. Going to smack blockers with that one basically. The trigger is to also bounce something with a cost of 2 or less to the owner's hand. Once again, bye-bye to those blockers. Radio Knife is the first 4 cost event we have here. 2 parts to this effect is activate main. You can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less, and then you KO something with a cost of 5 or less that is rested. So sometimes you're hitting 2 bodies with this effect, other times you're just resting and then KOing just the 1 character. Dan Punk is the other 4 cost event that we have on the list, slightly better this one. The activate main is you can look at the top card of your or your opponent's life, you can leave it there or move it to the bottom of the life, and then you KO something with a cost of 5 or less. Doesn't have to be rested, you just KO it, you just smack it out of the park right there. The trigger is you draw 2 cards and discard 1 card. The weak don't get to choose how they die is a 5 cost event, which is pretty cool because it's a main and a counter event. You can KO something that's rested with a cost of 7 or less. God Thread, 5 cost event as well. You straight up just KO something with a cost of 5 or less, and then you ramp it on as active. The trigger is to ramp it on as active. The 5 cost to KO or 5 cost can be hefty in some situations, but some situations pretty good to have. The Divine Departure we've spoken about, and the Barrier Pistol, the last card on this page here. 5 cost to bottom deck something with 6,000 power or less. Now let's talk about the cards that ball control, which basically means you're resting characters with these cards here. Wire is the first one, 3 cost, 4,000 power body, 1,000 counter. On play, rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost equal to or less than the total of your and your opponent's life cards added together. The trigger, if you have 2 or less life cards, you get to play it out. Pretty good all around. The Brook is a vanilla stat line, 3 cost, 5,000 body. On KO, rest one of your opponent's leaders or a character with a cost of 5 or less. I'm not sure if that's exact translation or if it's just a character with a cost of 5 or less, so just double check that if you open that in your packs there. Both of these are common, so you're most likely going to see one or both of these. Moving on to the cards that have rush, there's only 2 of them in the set. The first one is Burgess, a 5 cost, 6,000 body, no counter. The way it gains rush is if you attach a Don to it and if you have 8 or more cards in your trash. The Zoro is a vanilla stat line, 3 cost, 5,000 body. The way it gains rush is if you have less life than your opponent. The trigger, you trash a card from your hand, and if your leader is a supernova type, you can play it out. So it works well with the Zoro, the Captain Kids, or the Rainbow Luffy. So that card gets better in those decks as well. And both of these are uncommon, so may or may not see these, but hopefully you do. Rush is always good in this format. And next we're going to be talking about the other cards. These are cards which have decent effects, just don't really kind of fall into a particular category. They're just good. The first one that we have here is the Sanji, the Nami Sanji. 3 cost, 3,000 body, 1,000 counter. Your turn, this character gains 3,000 power. On KO, you draw a card. All around a pretty good card, especially in Sanji. You get a nice 6k swing early, and then you get to draw a card when they swing into it. The Hawkins, pretty good card. 4 cost, 5,000 power, 1,000 counter. On KO, you can trash the top card of your opponent's life. Trigger, draw 2 cards, trash 1 card. The on KO effect gets better if you run the new kit as well, because you can make that a blocker and force that effect to happen with that there. So keep that in mind if you want to run the new Captain Kid. Cavendish is a vanilla stat line, a body, 4 cost, 6,000 body when attacking. Once per turn, draw 2 cards, trash a card. Ryuma, similar stats as the Cavendish. The effect for this one is a Don ×1. This character gains double attack. Pretty good one for the Sanji ones. Get a sneaky double attack in there for 7k. The Smoker, once again, a vanilla stat line body, 5 cost, 7,000 power, has Banish built in. Activate main, you can set one of your rested Don as active. You just can't activate any other Don via character effects, which doesn't really kind of come up in this sealed event. A nice way to reuse some Don each of your turns. If you're playing Sanji as well, you play this out, you activate its effect to restand a Don. You can attach that Don and then you can use your Sanji's ability to give it rush and swing 8k Banish. Pretty good. Captain Kid is the last one that we have here on the list, an 8 cost, 9,000 body. On play, you rest this character to trash the top card of your opponent's life. End of your turn, if your opponent has 2 or less life cards, you draw a card and then trash a card. All these cards pretty good, but here's the downside to it. Their rarities are ridiculous. The only uncommon on this list is Ryuma, the Cavendish, and the Hawkins are the rares. The others are super rare. So there is a world where you don't see any of these, which is going to suck, but hopefully you see them because they're just great cards to have. Now let's talk about the combo cards. The cards are synergized, work well together, and these guys help you swarm the board. The first one here is the Caesar Soldier. Cost you 3, 4,000 body. On play, you play a Punk Hazard type card with a cost of 2 or less from your hand, which is either the Rock or the Scotch. And guess what? The Rock and the Scotch both play each other out. Pretty good to have. And if you're running Zoro as a leader, you can make the Caesar Soldier a 5k. You only need to attach an extra Don to the Rock to make it a 5k to also get some swings going on there. So pretty good combo to be aware of. The Rock and the Scotch are both common as well, so you probably see a few of those. And then the Caesar Soldier uncommon, may or may not see it, but you don't need to kind of get the full combo going. It's just nice if you have all the pieces. But also the trick is to have them all in your hand at the same time. Now let's talk about the filler cards. The cards which are good, but like not good enough to be in the must include section. You're basically going to fill some gaps with these here. First of all, we have the Frankie, 4 cost, 5,000 body, 1,000 counter, once per turn. If this character were to be KO'd in battle, you may instead add the top life card to your hand. Nice way to build your hand if you're being starved. Also a nice way to protect a character to get some extra swings. The Shiryu, same stats as the Frankie. The first part of the effect is the only relevant part for the decks that are not Rainbow Luffy. This character gains 2,000 power, so it's a 7k body on your opponent's turn, hard for them to kind of beat over. We'll talk about the other part of the effect in a moment. The Pika, same stats as the other two. Once per turn, if this character were to be KO'd by an effect, you can instead rest 2 Don cards to save it. So that's kind of a built-in counter protection right there, which is nice to have. The Fighting Fish basically in this filler section because it has vanilla stats, 4 cost, 6,000 body, effect not relevant for this format. The Kuzan, 5 cost, 5,000 body, basically in there because of its overarching effect, which says it cannot be removed by your opponent's effect. So just a sticky body. The other part of the effect not going to be relevant in the ordinary decks. Even in the Rainbow Leafy deck, probably not going to be a very relevant effect. Next we have the new gate, the Enel and the Zoro. These guys have all the same stats, which is 5 cost, 6,000 body, 1,000 counter, and they all require you to have 2 or more rested characters to trigger their effects. So the new gate will allow you to rest something with a cost of 5 or less, and then you can KO one of your opponent's rested characters with the cost of 3 or less. The Enel allows you to draw 3 trash 2, Graceful Charity, and the Zoro will buff itself by 2k on your opponent's turn. 8k body, hard for them to deal with. Now the Rosinante, I probably did Rosinante dirty by not including it in the must include other section, so you could probably just bump it into that section. 5 cost, 6,000 body, 1,000 counter. On play, you trash an event card from your hand to draw 2 cards. At the end of your turn, if you have 7 or more drawn cards, you can set 2 of them as active. Really good way to have access to those counter events that we spoke about before. So just, yeah, great card to have there. Next on this list, we have the 2 secret rares of the set, the Luffy and the Law. The Luffy, 6 cost, 7,000 body, 1,000 counter. Once per turn, it cannot be KO'd by an effect. The other part of the effect is when attacking, take 3 cards from your trash, bottom deck him, and then if your opponent has 5 or more cards in their hand, they trash 1 card. Great way to kind of control their hand size there. The Law, vanilla stat line. We've said that catchphrase there again. 7 cost, 9,000 body. On play, you can reveal a supernova type card from your hand, put it in your life face down. We do have access to a fair few of them. Some of them have some okay triggers, which we've spoken about before. Then the other part of that effect is if your leader is a supernova type, give it a rested Don. So works well for those Zoros, the kids, and the Rainbow Luffy. And the last card that we have on this list is Liberation. This is another removal card. It's a hefty cost you 6, but you can KO 2 characters with it. The catch with it is you have to have 2 or more characters less than your opponent. So if you have 2 characters, they have to have 4, that kind of maths going on there. But if you do meet those requirements, you can KO something with a cost of 6 or less and KO something with a cost of 4 or less, which hits a bunch of stuff. And the trigger is you can nullify an effect of one of your opponent's characters or leaders for the turn. Good going into the restanding Captain Kid, so you can kind of stop that. Some other character effects you may want to stop with that one as well. If we're looking at the breakdown, the rarities here, got a nice kind of spread there. The commons are the Frankie, Fighting Fish, the Newgate, and the Zoro, and your uncommon is your Pika, with the rest of them being at the higher rarities right there. Now let's talk about our good friend Rainbow Luffy. So for those of you that want to play it, or for those that you are forced to play it, include the cards we've spoken about before, but slap these in your deck as well. The Zoro we've spoken about. The Shiryu we've kind of spoken about. The second part of that effect, activate main once per turn. You can KO something with a cost of 3 or less, but only on the turn that you play this card. It's not a reoccurring thing. It's just on the turn that you play this card. So great way to smack some blockers around with the Shiryu there. The Inazuma, 4 cost, 5,000 body, 1,000 counter. Don times 1 when attacking. Rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost equal to or less than the total of you and your opponent's life cards. That effect actually probably just bump it into the other cards to include. So a bit of a bonus for you guys that are still watching. Trigger, if the total of your and your opponent's life is less than 5, you can play this card out. Pretty good. The Caribou, 4 cost, 5,000 body, 1,000 counter. Don times 1. If your opponent has 3 or more life cards, this character cannot be KO'd in battle. Great effects right there. Smiley, this is another form of power reduction. 5 cost, 6,000 body. So some good stats there. On play, you can minus something by 3,000 power for the turn. Hefty right there. Isho, this card is the best card in this Rainbow Luffy kind of extras. 5 cost, 6,000 body. On play, rest 2 characters with a cost of 5 or less. Madness, 2 of them. And then the last card we have here is Punk Hazard, which is a stage, cost you 1. You rest the stage, add a rested Don to a character or leader. Very, very good. Being able to use 11 Don every turn, you can't complain with that right there. Now, if we break down the rarities here, a nice little spread here. Your commons are your Inazuma, your Isho, and your Punk Hazard. Your uncommons are your Zoro and your Caribou, with your others being your rares. And that basically does us for our tips and tricks for the OP-10 pre-release. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Roast me if I missed anything. Also, let us know if you have any other tips that you want to leave for the nice folks here in the YouTube community. Hopefully you guys go well with your pre-release. Join our Discord, let us know how you've gone, or if you have any other questions. Link to that is in the description down below. Good luck, stay beautiful, and we'll see you all in the next one.